SHFiguarts General Grievous is finally here at the tail end of 2025, under the wire for the 20th anniversary year of Revenge of the Sith. A long-anticipated figure coming in at a terrible time for importing figures from Japan that don't have distribution rights in North America. This cost me a cool $150 when all was said and done. The art direction is what makes the Star Wars prequels so special to me. General Grievous's design is just so spooky and unique, and such a great example of that, so I'm happy to have a version of him in my collection. I think he might be the largest figure released in the SHF Star Wars line. He comes in a bit of an oversized box compared to their more standard size, as you can see here. But it retains the same design, glossy black all around with some metallic trim. This time it's silver, all around the window cutout. Across the bottom we have your brand logos, Bandai, Tamashii Nations, designed by Tamashii Nations in Japan, Bandai Spirits made in China, Bandai Namco in the upper right corner, General Grievous at the bottom of the window, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith below that. On the left it just says Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, and then we have some ship detail graphic art. At the bottom we also have the holographic Tamashii Nations quality sticker. On the bottom just some distribution information. Up on top, similar to the left side, just name of the character and the film. And on the left, we have the typical character portrait photograph. And then around the back, a range of promotional images showing off different accessories and poses for the figure. You'll also find the age and safety information on the back. Warning, choking hazard, small parts, not for children under 3 years, intended for ages 15 and up. Let's break him out and see if he's worth the wait. In the box behind the tray, there's a silver panel and a little instruction sheet with the parts list of different hands, areas that you might want to be careful about paint rub, how to swap the hands, how to swap the split arms, how to use the different lightsabers. Then on the back, we can see how to attach the cape. There's a little panel that comes off the back of his neck where the cape can plug into, lightsaber storage inside the cape, and he comes with a display stand. So behind the tray we have a plastic bag with the display stand, another that I have opened, which includes his wired cloth cape, and then in the tray, the figure itself, Grievous's head is just Grievous's head. He doesn't have any alternate expressions or anything. It would have been cool if they had given him a face or an alternate head with flames shooting out of his eyes from the end of the battle with Kenobi. Maybe we'll see if we can make that happen with some other effects that I have lying around. He comes with 3 pairs of hands for the fully connected arms, including a pair of straight lightsaber holding hands, a pair of angled lightsaber holding hands, and a pair of these really cool, spindly, spidery gesture hands that every villain should have. And then, of course, he has his 4 split arms, each of which has half a lightsaber holding hand, which of course he can use to hold these 4 different lightsabers, 2 green, 2 blue. The 2 on the right here are more just generic Jedi hilts. The 2 on the left appear to be just copies of Anakin and Obi-Wan's lightsabers. However, they've given the Anakin one a green blade. Let's take him out and see how the scale is. Here's Grievous at his maximum fully extended height with our Revenge of the Sith Jedi duo. We have the Black Series Obi-Wan and Anakin, as well as the SHFiguarts Obi-Wan and Anakin. And doing a quick vertical scan here, we can see how their heights compare relative to Grievous. And for some Separatist action, I don't have all the Separatist droids to compare, but I do have the Black Series B1 and the SHFiguarts B1, as well as the Black Series B2 Super Battle Droid. I don't have the Black Series Grievous or Magna Guards, but from what I've seen, they are both pretty underscaled. Next, let's talk about the engineering on this figure, because everything about it is mechanically weird. Some high-level points, it's a very spindly design with long, thin legs, a very narrow waist, but then a bit more substantial in the chest, shoulders, neck, which tends to make him fairly top-heavy. So he's going to need a really solid base of support. that is kind of spoiled by the fact that they really dropped the ball on joint tolerances in the lower body. And you can see that just holding him here. Look how much his legs are wiggling. Sometimes even when I raise the leg, it drops back down on its own. So it's pretty disappointing that they didn't really dial that in and give him a stable base to stand on. I guess some of the sting is taken off by the fact that he does come with a display base to support him. Maybe they just figured this design is going to be really difficult to make stable anyways, so invested more attention in the upper body and the shoulders, which I do think they did a great job with the shoulders. And I've seen some comments floating around that this is basically like a 15-year-old figure. It's definitely not. If you look at that original prototype, there are some significant differences. Like, it doesn't even look like it has functioning elbow joints. It has these weird fixed hinges on the wrists. The hips appear different. So I think a lot has probably changed between then and now as far as this design goes. Another note, his feet, which are pretty wide and have the opportunity for stability, run into some difficulties with just the angle of these ankles and the fact that the ankle joints themselves aren't the tightest. And something I found out the hard way is the claws on his feet are not articulated, even though it appears that the front and back sets are separate from kind of the main hub of his foot. This one on his right foot was moving freely right out of the box, which made me think maybe it's supposed to have a ball joint there. None of the other ones were moving, and eventually it just snapped off and I had to super glue it back on. It's doing okay now and holding him up well enough, but you can see this one's kind of on its way out and I'm going to have to glue that eventually. So that's kind of frustrating. I don't know if it really would have helped to have articulated toes. The knees work fairly well and their tolerances are pretty good. The biggest problem is definitely the hips, which are these double hinge joints. So they almost function like drop-down hips. You can see if you pull it down, that inner hinge activates, which means he can like kick straight up, but it also adds to the instability factor and is a little bit clunky to get in exactly the position you want. Another thing, you can hear just how squeaky some of the joints are. So with that in mind, let's go top to bottom and we'll try to make sense of his articulation as well as we can. I'm going to set up the X and Y axes here. His head is on a single ball peg going into this like disc hinge, which gives a little bit of extra range going up or down. And you can see it actually moves that spike on the back of his head. You can basically look straight up, which is really good, but doesn't look down without the assistance of one of the cooler things about this figure, this neck hinge, which you can see has these like extending mechanical pipes. There's like 6 or 7 of them back there going into his body and kind of, I don't know, making up his spine and other arterial pathways that are still left on this guy. And with all of that, he doesn't look down a ton, but it's just pretty dang cool. It does tilt side to side a little bit. It's a little bit limited just given the design. It does seem like that's maybe a ball joint in there and not just a hinge. You can see this like main part of his spine is also on a ball joint, and that's what gives it like enough flexibility to extend in and out like that. Another area that they did quite well is the shoulders, which are on this kind of tuning fork ball joint with 2 hinges, which support his split arms. We'll take a look at that in a moment. And it works really well. I think this is where the bulk of their attention went as far as engineering on this guy. It's very smooth to move. You can swivel it all the way around. It hinges way up. These shoulder pads are just on ball joints on the back of this back arm. His biceps are already separated, and then he comes with the interchangeable forearms. There's not really a bicep swivel, but you can sort of swivel the combination of both bicep pieces. Doesn't really feel like it's designed to do that though. Another cool thing, the elbow joints are 2 single hinges and a sliding piston joint on the upper part of the forearm. And you can see how that works there and allows him to bend the elbow about 90 degrees, which I think is pretty good given the design here. If you like mechanical parts that slide past each other, this figure might be very interesting for you. Standard Figuarts ball hinge wrists can hinge in any direction and are pretty unimpaired by the design, so they get a good amount of range. Now the torso is unfortunately pretty much static. There's just a single ball joint at the waist, and that lets him tilt just a tiny amount side to side, hardly at all going back, and then maybe like 10 degrees going forward. I think if there was another ball joint between the like rib cage and the abdomen, that would have been good. And then another missed opportunity that would have been really cool is if these chest panels were connected on ball joints. Instead, they seem to just be on fixed joints, which I don't really understand. I mean, notably, Obi-Wan kind of spreads them apart to finish Grievous off, and that would have been cool if the figure was able to do that, but they definitely don't seem like they're supposed to. So yeah, the torso is a little bit too limited. Now we get down to these weird hips that are this double hinge design. Like I said, it kind of works like a drop down. Gives you like full range kicking forward. If you work around the butt plate back here, good range going backward. If you try to kick them directly out to the side without adjusting this hip cap, the range is going to be limited, but if you just swivel that hip cap towards the back and then kick to the side, you get about twice as much. So that works pretty well. It's just pretty clunky. He also gets a ton of inverse hip range, so he could probably cross his legs if you really wanted him to. He doesn't have any kind of like thigh swivel, and not having any kind of upper leg swivel, either at the thigh or at the top of the knee, can make it a little hard for him to get down into crouching poses. The knees are double hinge, integrated really nicely into the mechanical design. With both, basically he can fold his leg over on itself. And then the ankles are kind of a swivel hinge that gives you range mostly in the forward direction to give him that like chicken leg stance that he normally has. And then the main hub of his feet seems to be on a like single ball joint, so it does get a little bit of pivot, but not a ton, especially not going back or forward. And as I mentioned, be very careful with these claws, as the attachment to the main foot is really small. Like I said, this one's on its way out, and I'm going to have to glue it when it does give. Already had to glue this one back on, so just watch out for those. Next, I'll demonstrate how to swap the split arms. The connected arm pulls out at the bicep just like this. The back piece is easier to remove, and then the front pieces are much harder. And that's, I guess, where most of the like retention in the arm as a whole comes from. Similarly, it helps you tell which is which. This is the front, this is the back, and you can tell because of the little divot. And they also have some like gunmetal silver paint up to the point where they slot into the shoulder, so you know how far to push them in. So let's go ahead and attach the front one first, since it's going to be a tighter fit. Holding the shoulder socket with one hand, apply steady pressure. This is a little bit easier to do when I'm not reaching around the camera. I sometimes get comments about like, oh, why are you so shaky? You try filming with your arms wrapped around a camera, and then the back one goes in much easier. Just like that. And there you go. You can see they're totally independent, able to swivel around on that shoulder joint. They both get about 90 degrees of elbow bend. Each of them has a standalone ball hinge wrist with half of a hand in a lightsaber gripping pose, and they work extremely well. You can give them the old Crimson Typhoon look for all my Pacific Rim fans out there. Or let's go ahead and swap the other arm. We're going to pull the back piston out first. Gives us a little bit more clearance to pull the tighter one off the front. It's really nice and tight on there. Back forearm without the indentation goes right in. Front forearm with the little indentation. And here is four-armed Grievous, something I didn't show off before. He does have kind of a butterfly joint. It's really just a function of this ball joint shoulder here. But he does have some clearance like over the chest, especially with the front arm. This is a really weird figure to demonstrate, but you can see he can basically cross the elbows on the upper arms and the wrists on the lower arms. And then around the back, there's actually a lot of clearance. So I expect he's probably able to really, like cross both biceps. And then the other unique thing to demonstrate in this mode is he can sort of mostly turn into Spider Grievous. To do that, the first thing we need to do is invert the hip, just being mindful of the direction of both these hinges so that you don't push them in the wrong way. And if you invert the hips, you can see now he's able to kind of bring them out. They don't really go back further than this, but this works well enough. Then you can bend his knees, and then the arms just sort of form his front spider legs. I think technically when he does this in the movie, the hands go completely to the front forearm somehow, and the back forearm just has no hands. So if you really, really wanted to be accurate, I guess you could take these hands off, but I find it works just as well to like kind of orient them so that they look like little claws. Repeat that on the other side. And then since he can look up really well, that helps him to be looking forward in this mode. It's worth noting also both arms have sort of a bicep swivel at the top, so that can help with like making this face the right way and then this arm face the right way. And there you go, something like this. And then to transform him back, very carefully rotate the hip into its upright orientation. One more time, I'll show you how to get it swiveled out like this. What I do is kind of all in one motion, but to break it down, kind of bring the leg in almost like this, and then swivel it around like that. And that brings it into this position where he can then kind of... Okay. And then to unwrap it, you just do the reverse. Also worth noting, the elbow pistons are no longer here, so the split arms are always fully extended. And all of them is super smooth. The arm and neck articulation, they just really cooked, and everything else they microwaved. Let's go ahead and swap back to the connected arms. Easier to remove the back. Front, it's going to take a little bit of force. And then you just want to get this fortune cookie out of the way and try to line up the design of the upper arm. Front has the little notch. And then just make sure they're both lined up. Go ahead and push in. And what's going to happen here is the back is going to push in, but the front is going to push the piston at the elbow. So what you have to do now, once the back piston is in, you need to bend the elbow and then push up from the elbow like this. And that pushes the front in all the way. Bend the elbow and push up from the elbow joint while holding the top of the shoulder like this. And there you go. Back to connected arms. Next, I mentioned it can be a little bit tricky to get him into a sort of like wide stance crouching pose. So I want to demonstrate how I do that. But basically here, the goal is to get the leg kicked out to the side like this so that he can have this kind of stance. And to accomplish that, basically what you need to do is get these leg hinges so that they're horizontal. This is the way that hinge is moving right now. And that lets him get down into a crouch like that. Easier said than done though, because there's just a lot in the way down here. Sometimes it helps to maybe move the torso a little bit so you can slide these hip caps out of the way. Here you can see the hinge is oriented like this. And I have to kind of reach in with my thumb, press it against the joint, swivel it, and now that allows me to turn the joint as I'm turning the leg. And now it's in this orientation again. So to put it back, put a thumb in here up against the joint, and then very slowly and carefully turn the leg and the joint together. And now we have him like this. And you could kind of pick whether you want the hip cap towards the back or the front. I think technically the design would be to have it towards the front. And so you can bring that back over. And then to complete the like crouchy look, you can bring the neck forward like this. And now his transformation to grumpy battle commander Grievous is almost complete. The last thing he needs is his cape. So we'll go ahead and demonstrate the cape next. Before we give him his cape, let's just swap the hands. The fingers are really spindly on all of the hands. So be very, very careful when pushing them onto these wrist joints. Just make sure you're really holding it from the palm and try not to squeeze anywhere close to the fingers as much as you can. There we go. And these hands are awesome. Super creepy looking. Like a face hugger for a hand. Very expressive. Let's swap the other one. There we go. Now, to attach the cape, there's a little panel at the back of his collar here that comes out. It's very, very small. So you want to be very careful not to lose this. And it exposes a little socket, and stitched into the top of the cape is this little peg we're going to port into the back. To feed the cape over the head, I find it's easiest if you start at the chin and then bring it down over the back since it's narrowest at the chin and then gets wider as it goes to the top. And then it's very easy to just plug into that socket at the back. The finishing touch, however, I've seen other people have more success with this, but really what I want is the top of the cape underneath his collar piece. There's a wire running through it, which just makes it a little bit challenging to tuck it into such a small space. If you bring the collar up like this, I should be able to, but I don't know, maybe skill issue here. It seems like I can get one side at a time, but then not the other. If I maybe use one of these, something with a soft tip that's not going to scratch or tear it. That's about as good as I've managed to do it so far. It's pretty close to all the way under, just poking out a little bit towards the front. But from here, you can see he does have a little brooch, and it's slightly off-center, which is actually good because his cape is worn asymmetrically like that. If you tuck his arms in as much as possible, and you want to get him wrapped in his cloak as much as he can be, the wire fights you a little bit, but that's about as good as I can do like that. I'll take a photo and see if I can get it a little bit cleaner. As I mentioned, there's wire around the collar and then all the way around the perimeter. Then there's also an additional supporting wire down the back, and it makes the cape very posable. I have a couple of complaints about the cape, though. First is the obvious liberties they took with the design, just making it solid black. Grievous's cape is a dark gray, and then on the back there should be a logo that's sort of like screen printed onto the fabric, and they've just skipped that completely. The inside is a nice shiny red, and it has these lightsaber pockets stitched in, which is my second complaint. It's kind of minor, but I feel like they're a little bit too high in the cape, and it makes it hard. Like if they were down here where my thumb is, it would be easier for him to reach across like he's grabbing the lightsaber. As it is, it's kind of a stretch for him to get up there. And so, yeah, I think they maybe just put those a little bit too high. You can also see a little bit of thread at the end of these stitches. You could maybe clean that up if you really wanted to. Otherwise, though, I think this cape is actually really nice. The material's very fine, but it's not transparent at all because it's 2 layers. It's got a bit of a sheen to it on both the black part and this really vibrant red. It really pops, I think, and looks quite cool, all things considered. So if you're okay with the shortcuts on the design as far as the screen printed logo and the exact color of the outer part, I think it's actually a really nice piece. It's a little bit of a pain to get it tucked under his collar. It'd be nice if this could come up a little bit. You could really tuck it in and then push the whole collar piece back down onto it. And it definitely looks best when posed dynamically. I think if you want something that just kind of drapes and he can wrap around himself, the wires in this are going to fight you more than they help you, especially kind of at the shoulders here. I've seen people recommend folding these how curtains hang from a window and get this sine wave pattern here. Once you do this, to kind of contain all that fabric that's hanging down, you can kind of accordion it together. You do want to be careful not to bend it too sharply or the wire could split. But then once you have that done, it'll at least drape a little bit more comfortably. I guess the other thing is it maybe seems a little bit short. It seems like it's definitely designed for Grievous when he's hunching over, more so like this. The wires at the front here, you just really need to kind of wrap them around the arm. And if you can kind of get it tight up against the arm, I think that's when it's going to look best. Like it's actually draping over the arm and not just like poking out. And you can get it looking pretty good. Design shortcuts aside, I think it's a really nice cape overall. You can kind of have him do his like grabbing the back of it. You can use these extended hands. Here's my lightsaber collection pose. And this is what I was talking about, where the pockets are just like too high in the cape. Like you get it all posed up and then you want to do this, and I feel like they should be here, but they're like up in his armpit. So you can kind of pull them down, but as soon as you try to move the arm, they're going to ride back up. But I guess he just like really wants to keep his collection secure. Same. One thing I love about SHFiguarts and what elevates them visually above their Black Series equivalent is the sharpness or like resolution of the fine details. You can see all of his armor pieces have this really delicate like sandstone sort of texture, conveying this is like ceramic plates of some kind. And they also have like all this scarring, dirt, and weathering applied over top, which sometimes Figuarts come out a little bit too clean looking, and I feel like this one, they've done a great job making Grievous look like the weathered veteran that he is. Additionally, the metallic parts are covered in metallic paint. Sometimes, not always, but a lot of the time, Black Series will skip on metallic paint and just use plastic with sort of metallic flakes in it, and the effect is just not the same. Little detail like the rings on these hoses, the weird vents where his mouth should be, This grooved sort of design is sculpted into the armor. Actually, you can tell the difference between the painted metallic parts and the parts that are just kind of molded with metallic flakes. They'll use the molded metallic parts for joints, because paint doesn't usually last on joints. So just compare like the finish of the thigh piece and the knee. You can see how flat this looks. Metallic surfaces have different reflection patterns. So if you compare the thigh piece and the back of the legs here to the knee joint, that's a good example of what I'm talking about. And if you go back and look at like the Super Battle Droid, that figure is almost entirely plastic with metallic flakes, and I think it hurts the look of the figure a little bit. It's still a really nice figure for the price it's sold at, but this is one of the differences that SHFiguarts brings with their higher price points. So if you care about things like how sharp the detail looks, it's kind of like a 720p versus 4K type comparison. Bringing him in nice and close, let's get a good look at the face, which you can just see these creepy little reptilian eyes poking out. They have a very glossy look to them, and it's awesome. There's a dark ring painted around the eyelids to give them some depth, and then like a burnt red fleshy surrounding. Very creepy. Here's a close-up on the neck and the spine, and you can see the very top of the translucent green, which is embedded inside the metal rib cage. It doesn't really carry light as much as you'd like, but there you can see it a bit. And this is where, like, if they really wanted to go hard on the detail, you'd be able to pull his chest and rib cage back. And I mean, in the movie, he's got his like heart and lungs still in there, I think. Get a good look at the back. Oops, I forgot to reattach a little plug. So I'll just show you how to do that. It comes like this, and that's upside down. You just kind of want to follow the pattern that's on there already. And very carefully pop it in, and it fits in pretty well. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall out or anything. And then here's that spine and neck actuation. And this is one place I remember from the manual that there could be some paint rub. Here's the side profile. Again, there's that little spike at the back of the head that kind of moves with the neck just a little bit. Back of his head. His weird little bat ears. And then I don't really know if the scratches and blast marks on his forehead are like perfectly out of the screen, but they definitely add some character to the design. They're continued down on the collar piece. So where does that leave us with General Nightmare Fuel? Let's start with the negatives first. While it is very good, I'm going to say a lot of good things about it in a moment, but I think some of the cons hold it back from being the slam dunk definitive 1/12 scale General Grievous that a lot of us were hoping it would be, and that it very well could have been with just some minor changes, maybe just a little bit longer in the oven. The biggest problem I have is the really unstable legs. If you're going to have them in a display, it's full-time display stand only, and maybe that's inevitable for this design, but still it would be a much more fun figure to handle overall if the legs were able to support him a little bit better. And as you can see in the pictures, you can get him to balance for long enough to take a photo. I think leaving him like that for, I don't know, any length longer than like an hour is asking for him to topple over, and if he's in a display with other figures, he's taking all of them with him. The other ones are, I would say, more minor. They definitely cut some corners on the cape design, and then there are a few things that I kind of consider just missed opportunities for such an expensive figure. I would have loved an alternate head with fire effects from his eyes. I think that would have been awesome. Making his rib cage articulated also would have been a huge plus. And maybe including like an electro staff. I know they had like a promo picture that seemed like it leaked where he was holding one. I don't know if that's something they cut from the release, but that stinks if it was. And that's pretty much all I have for the cons. I know those may seem like major things, but I think I can live with most of them, especially since I don't typically display my figures for extended periods of time, and if I do, it's in a case where they just can't fall over. So that's not a huge issue for me. It would be nice if it was a little bit more hand-friendly. Now for the good parts. The sculpt and detail are at the level I expect, or even above the level I expect for SHFiguarts. And while there are some frustrating parts of his engineering, it is equal parts really quite unique, cool, and impressive in the neck and the shoulders. They really nailed the forearm mode, especially, which just has so much shelf presence, camera presence, whatever you want to call it. It looks awesome. Very good, very well done. That's like the key feature of a Grievous figure, and they nailed that part for me. I'm pretty happy with all the accessories that he comes with. Like I said, a few missing things like swooshing lightsaber blades, some flame effects, really would have taken it to the next level. But I think what we got here is a good spread. It's good that he comes with a display stand, and pre-tariff shipping price was already pushing the upper limit a little bit. I think it was 120. Add another 30 on top of that now, and it's easily pushing 150, 160, and it's only going to go up from here since they don't have North American distribution rights. It's a great way to cap off the Revenge of the Sith anniversary. Looks like there might be another Anakin coming, and the face does look a lot better on that one, so I'm interested to see how much that has improved. It's a very unique figure. If you are like an articulation nerd like me, you'll probably enjoy just moving the joints around and like watching the pistons go in and out. I enjoy that kind of thing. I imagine other people do too. Watch out for the claws on the feet. They are not articulated. This has been the Art of Action Figures. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.